I think a lot of us have a habit that looks like generosity from the outside, but it isn't. It looks responsible, selfless, reliable. People thank us for it. Sometimes they admire us for it. Sometimes we admire ourselves for it. The habit is this. We take responsibility for things that do not belong to us. Someone is disorganized. We compensate. Someone avoids a difficult conversation. We initiate it. Someone repeatedly fails to plan ahead, we absorb the consequences. Someone creates chaos, we become the cleanup crew. And because we're helping, nobody objects, least of all us. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Not every burden you're carrying is evidence of virtue. Some of it is evidence of poor boundaries. Some of it is evidence that you've quietly appointed yourself manager of other people's lives. And sometimes that's not kindness. Sometimes it's control dressed up as helpfulness. This week's parasha is Naso, and one of the things I keep coming back to is how carefully responsibility is distributed. The Mishkan has to move. It's a huge operation, thousands of components, countless details, and yet the Torah is remarkably precise. This family carries this, that family carries that. These people are responsible for these tasks. Those people are responsible for those tasks. The Torah could have simply said, the Levites carried the Mishkan. Instead, it spends verse after verse after verse assigning responsibility. Why? Because a functioning community depends on clarity, not goodwill. Clarity. Who is responsible? For what? And just as importantly, who isn't? I think many of us are deeply uncomfortable with that second question. Who isn't responsible? Because we've been taught that caring means carrying. If I care enough, I should step in. If I care enough, I should absorb it. If I care enough, I should fix it. But that's not actually how healthy communities work. Healthy communities work when responsibility remains attached to the people who own it. A few weeks ago, in my Dvar Torah and Achrei Mot, I spoke about boundaries, about how every yes creates an obligation, about how every yes is also a no somewhere else, and about how boundaries are not there to shrink life, they're there to protect it. Naso feels like the next chapter of that conversation, because once you've decided what you're protecting, another question immediately appears. What exactly are you responsible for carrying, and what have you picked up simply because nobody else did? Those are not the same thing. The parent who solves every problem eventually raises a child who can't solve problems themselves. The manager who does everyone's work eventually builds a team that won't do the work. The friend who continually rescues eventually teaches rescue as a strategy. The community member who carries everything eventually becomes resentful that nobody else is helping. Naso is not a parasha about carrying more, it's a parasha about carrying correctly, and those are not the same thing. So the kavanah I'm holding this week is this. I lift others up without losing balance myself. Not because balance feels nice, because imbalance eventually harms the very people we're trying to support. The question I'm asking myself this Shabbat is, where am I confusing helpfulness with carrying someone else's load? Where have I started taking responsibility for outcomes that don't actually belong to me? And for you, what responsibility in your life genuinely has your name written on it? And what responsibility have you picked up simply because nobody else did? Because Naso suggests that wisdom is not measured by how much you carry. It's measured by whether you're carrying the right things. Shabbat Shalom.